Hello, and welcome to the Weird Waves podcast. My name is Taylor, and this is episode 38. On this week's episode, we are talking to Cris Mills. He is a surf coach from Surf Strength Coaching. He has a website and Instagram, and he has these specialized courses training people to surf. He does specific surf camps to get better at surfing. It's awesome. I actually found him through a previous episode guest who linked me to his free surf workout. I started doing it at the beginning of the quarantine, and it's awesome. It's incredible to talk to someone who has so much knowledge about land prep for surf, different stretches, different techniques, different training that you can use, and also why it works. The program itself, which I've started doing now, I got to try it out. It's so in-depth. It's really, really awesome, and it's just really interesting to talk to Cris. You hear about how he's handling quarantine. He was in Bali, now he's in Australia, and we do actually talk quite a bit about tacos, so it's a good, well-rounded podcast. I really hope that you guys enjoy it. 6:21 here. I'm in Michigan City, Indiana, and so yeah, it was, I feel like I've been cooking way more than usual, obviously. There's not a whole lot that you can do right now. So yeah, tacos it is. It was good. It's me and my husband here, and then our friend Vlad just moved in with us. So it's kind of fun. It's like taco night.
We do a taco night like usually every week.
Yeah.
My girlfriend and I for ages now. And one thing, like my sister, so I'm originally from the States, and my sister's still in LA. And when I was in LA in November, and my sole intention for being in Los Angeles was to eat as many proper fucking tacos as possible.
Let me just say, I lived in New Zealand. And when I was in New Zealand, when I came home, everyone was like, what do you miss? Or when you're going to visit home, like, what are you going to eat first? And where I went to high school, it was like 25% Mexican farm workers.
Yeah.
And I was like, I miss proper Mexican food, and menudo is my favorite. I love menudo. I know. Yeah. And I have like there's South American food. I bet it's the same in Oz. Like there's South American food, but not Mexican food. At least I couldn't find it proper at all.
No, not at all. Like a couple of years back when I was living in Sydney, me and a buddy had even spoken about opening up a taco truck.
Yes.
And just, like proper fucking tacos. And at the time, we really looked into it. All the zoning laws in Sydney were fucked. Like you wouldn't have been able to do a food truck. They've since changed. But like, it's not difficult to do a good taco or a good
Oh,
yeah.
Hold on, you cut out.
Good Mexican.
Sorry, you cut out there.
I was gonna say for this, we'll probably want to kill video.
Okay, yeah, just because.
And then just do audio.
Okay, cool.
It's strong Wi-Fi here, but it'll have a tendency to go in. It's up to you. Like sometimes it's fine, sometimes it'll cut out audio, but up to you, really.
We can just keep going only because I find with video, we cut each other off less, just because that, like with audio only, sometimes.
See your mouth moving.
Exactly, and there's so much like facial recognition that goes in conversation. But yes, I feel you. Did you say tamales? Tacos and tamales? Oh yeah, totally. It's funny, those things, that, and I also missed, and I actually had thought about opening when I was there, an American diner, like just shit diner food. Like yes, a meat pie is also very good when you're hungover, New Zealand style with meat and cheese pie, but like a shitty hash browns grease pile with like, it's so good. It's so like that American diner experience. You don't realize how intense it is until you leave, and then you come back and you're like, this is it. This is what I needed.
One of the other things that really stands out to me, so one of my like favorite snacks is just chips and salsa. Like plain tortilla chips with like good salsa. And I haven't done New Zealand, but have you spent any time in Australia?
No, I haven't.
So I would assume similar, but like in the States, right? Especially California, like I haven't done lots of Midwest, but if you walk into a grocery store, There's an entire like
Salsa.
4-shelf tall of salsas and
Yeah.
gourmet salsas, and you walk into a grocery store here, they have fucking Dorito nacho cheese chips and Doritos brand salsa, and that's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
man, come on with the salsa, guys. Like, step it up.
Yeah, that is true. We have like God, there's like mango salsas and like,
Black bean rancho chili. Like, yeah, yeah. Just
That's
not here.
so funny. Oh my God. It's funny it's just those small things. Like you don't realize them and you have to leave for a certain amount of time before you come back and you're like, I need tacos.
100%. My sister'd be like, Chris, what do you want for dinner tonight? I'm like, fucking tacos. Come on.
I'm in America, obviously.
What do you think? Shit.
Oh my gosh. So where in Australia are you?
So we're currently a place like the Gippsland region. It's like east of Melbourne,
Okay.
a couple hours east. And living in Bali, and her family's down this way. And so once everything started going a bit haywire, we just got out of Bali, and
Yeah,
so we'll
good.
spend time here. Yeah, yeah. We've got friends that stayed, and like you just don't know the time frames. And right now you can't even surf in Bali. So I'm like, shit, I'd rather be here than being in Bali. And it's just the what if. Like I wouldn't be directly stressed out if I was to maybe catch the virus thing, you would hope. But the medical system there isn't what
Yeah.
we have considerations of kind of standards. So we figured who knows how long it'll be? Let's go to Australia. And if this wasn't actually when we were trying to leave Bali, there was a chance I wasn't going to be allowed into Australia. So I already had like a follow-up ticket to LA, like ready to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, I heard that it was so complicated for a lot of different people trying to leave. And I think also too, what's so interesting, and maybe you can expand on this, but it kind of seems like nobody in the airport like fully knew what the rules were.
Didn't have a clue, right? Because you're from my perspective, like so I'm on partner visas and like I'm
Okay.
in this gray area of partner visa application processes to where like I'm not a permanent resident yet, but I'm not like a visitor visa. But you get these governmental mandates and it takes time for that actually to trickle down to this person you're talking to behind a desk who doesn't have a clue.
Right.
And yeah, it was full on. Like there was a period of time where they're like, "Nah, you can't. We're not issuing your boarding passes." And I'm like, "Nah, nah, nah. Like you guys are mistaken." They had to go make some calls, yada yada. But we were sitting there like watching a lot of people get refused,
Yeah.
like, and then they're just, all right, well, what the fuck do I do now? Speaking of cursing, can I curse on the
Oh,
podcast?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. It's very
All right.
open. Everything is open here. It just goes
Cool.
wherever it goes.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's
Cool.
how we
Go ahead
do
and do it.
things.
Go ahead and
Um,
do it.
yeah, it was very interesting to hear other people's stories because as I'm sure you know, as soon as you've traveled once or you know someone who's lived somewhere, it seems like all of your friends kind of have that same like have traveled or are trying to get
Yeah.
from one place to another.
Yep.
And what the issue seemed to be was not getting in, but was like connection flights were a huge problem because it's like you might get stuck in like my one friend was trying to get out of like I don't know, her stopover was Manila and she was like trying to get in before they
Yeah.
totally closed the Manila
Yeah.
airport and like she was like, it's like, whoa.
We were actually in the middle of a coaching trip. So we were in the Mentawais on a boat.
Okay.
So we have all over the world. And we basically cut the trip short because of the ongoing airport closures and potential of more airport closures. Because like Singapore was starting to lock down. Kuala Lumpur was starting to lock down. And when you're in Asia, like those are your hubs. Like that's what, if
Right.
those are closed, you're kind of just fucked. And so, yeah, we even had some guys getting back to the UK that had some issues. And then several days after we finally got everybody out and I was back, like things really started to lock down even further. So we were kind of lucky to have left when we did leave. And then we've got friends in Bali that are from Spain, and Italy, and they're not going back anytime soon. And so,
what an interesting situation. It's so, it's just very bizarre. I feel like for me personally, and I think at least some of the people that I've talked to, the Great Lakes surfers in this area, have kind of reached the point of acceptance in terms of like the 5 stages of grief. You're just kind of like, okay, I'm here now. I'm not fighting it, whatever. It's just really interesting. I've been able to surf still. I don't know if you can still surf.
We surfed yesterday, actually.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good.
It's fortunate. I think it goes to show, like, it's bizarre, and like, you're totally right. Everybody goes through stages of denial, acceptance, anger, etc. And it just shows how kind of fragile everything we assume to be normalcy really is. Like, it happened, like, when we left to get on the boat was March 13th. Things were going weird, but it wasn't. And 5 days later, it was like, guys, we need to stop the trip right now. Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's just the speed of development of everything is, I think, kind of fascinating. And it just goes to show, like, everything that we almost take for granted and we assume to be normal standard process, it's not. Like, it's not at all.
Totally. And I think too, this kind of like nomad living style that's very like native to surfing, the rest of the world has kind of just caught that wave, using the innuendo. It's so new. I feel like surfers and other, like, people that do like endless winters, like snowboarders and skiers and stuff, they are used to that lifestyle. And it's just been absolutely mental to just watch everything like go down. It's just very crazy. How has it affected your business? I'm really interested. Have you seen an uptick in subscriptions and stuff? Because that's actually how I found you. Is one of the other guys I've had on the podcast, he tagged me in your post about the 2-week like startup course, and I was like, awesome, my gym is closed, I don't know if I'm going to be able to surf, like, whatever. And then I wonder if you got a bunch of feedback from that.
Yeah, so there's definitely been an increase in all of that, which has been, I was just astoundingly lucky to be in a position where all that stuff was already kind of in place, and had been working towards some online presence the last couple of years. So it's certainly been an uptick, just in business in that regard. And then other aspects of business, like we've had to cancel all our coaching trips for the next couple months. Ones towards the end of the year are still on kind of hold and hiatus. We're not even totally locking down trips for next year. So that stuff's all been a bit dynamic. So essentially, I've just been really lucky to have the online stuff. And so I've been throwing a lot more effort at that recently. And there's definitely an increased demand for all of that stuff at the moment. So really, really fortunate in that regard. And just to be able to provide people some type of level of sanity. Because what I think a lot of people don't talk about at all is that all the mental, emotional shit that comes along with all of this stuff. And so suddenly for surfers as a whole, like, the outlet we get from surfing, there's the whole mental, spiritual, emotional components to it. And so I think people often neglect the mental, spiritual, kind of social components. So at least they only look at it as physical, but then, you're confined to your house, you're stuck around with your family, like the intensity of it and the stress of it and the financial constraints, that people do need some type of physical outlet. And I don't think they probably right away understand that, it's movement, it's good for you, but some of the mental stress relief that you get from it by just moving the body a bit. So there's definitely that component as well.
I think, so I actually started the program on Monday. I thought that would be cool for me to kind of start going through it so that we could talk about it. And I haven't done any like surf specific physical exercise, and I have to say I really enjoyed it, but it really made me think more about surfing not in the water. So like I could see everything, and I think the not having the surfing aspect here, only because it's flat right now, not because we can't surf. It's really very cool to kind of like take a microscope at your specific parts of your body that are obviously used for surfing, but not in the water. Like, it's very cool.
It's all, again, I think, so if I look at my standard clientele, generally it's somebody coming to me because their body's fucked in some way. Back issue, shoulder issue. They haven't surfed in like a decade and they've just let themselves go. And so I often find people not necessarily considering the physical aspect requirements of their body for surfing until like you yourself suddenly like, oh wow, it is this consideration suddenly of what is required of the body to surf, whereas most people don't make that consideration until either now when they're stuck inside or when something's gone wrong and suddenly, wow, I can't surf because of my lumbar disc herniation. Like that's how relevant it is, or my hip or shoulder, whatever the case may be. And so yeah, in terms of the training, it's just let's get you moving three-dimensionally in ways that can help support what you're asking of your body in the water. That's it.
How did you get started in surfing? Just in general. Did you grow up surfing?
I grew up in Florida, like Cocoa Beach, like on the water.
Yeah.
And so there was always like boogie boarding and like I was never like some young surf only, like lots of swimming, lots of boogie, and again Florida. And then we moved away from the coast. And I had surfed a little, like really young, and then so I really got into fishing, but then always kept going back to some surfing. And I skateboarded for years and years and years, like when we were living more inland. And all through high school, like I was kind of inland and had some buddies, you know, we like when the surf was up, we'd drive over to the East Coast. And it was through much of my late teens, college, like it was still intermittent surfing. Like I'd go down to Costa Rica for summer for like 2 or 3 months and then come back and do college. And then after college, I'd go off and live in Central America somewhere for like 6 months and then come back and bartend and make money. And so it was always this kind of start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. But had always been really, really inclined towards surfing and other water stuff. And so, yeah, it's kind of always been a part of my life in varying volumes, I guess you could say. And then the last couple of years, like between Australia and Indonesia, there's a lot of surfing.
Yeah. Is your background in like physical therapy or what is it, kinesiology or what is that? Because you obviously, like, again, from a consumer perspective, you're telling all of the muscles, all of what it's doing, why it's doing. And that's so, it gives you a lot of credibility. Not that you wouldn't have credibility, but it just seems like there's a whole lot of science behind what you're saying.
It's my formal background, like I went to school to be essentially the route of law school. And so like my bachelor's is criminal justice, kind of like pre-law kind of thing. And then it was after I graduated college, wasting away a full college education, where I started doing a lot of traveling, like long stretches. Like first time went to Australia for like a year and a half when I was like 22. And it was all amongst that and traveling and more surfing, where that kind of eventually rolled into me getting a personal trainer certificate because I was tired of bartending. And then once that happened, it just steamrolled into the last like decade plus of secondary education, courses, self-study, going back to school for some massage licensures. And at one point had gone back to school, starting to do a route for a physical therapy doctorate, and just thought better of it at the time. Like it wasn't the costs and time commitments were going to outweigh what else I was doing with my life. And so, yeah, just a lot of self-study. Like the field of training is one of the few fields where it helps if you have a formal education. Like I'd much prefer to have a medical background.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're willing to bust your ass, like you can still make do without, depending where you want to take it into the field.
So you're doing self-study in like medical journals and things like that, or how does that look for you? It's very interesting to hear people that that have taken their own route and know so much. Like,
well, I think I'm one of I'm one of those individuals that anything I do is not going to be enough for me. Like there's no self-satisfaction.
Okay.
So really, really driven of I need to know more. And within this health realm, you're always learning from these people that are fucking geniuses. Like it doesn't make fucking sense, And so there's this drive to be like, I should be that caliber, which is pretty much unattainable. But so from that, like you start with a personal training cert, and then it's like, okay, well, I don't know enough about shoulders because I keep seeing people with shoulder issues. And so then you start reading some orthopedic books about shoulder rehab, or you go do a clinical orientation or internship at a physio, take a course, or okay, I don't know enough anatomy, so let me go ahead and really dial in my anatomy. So I did a whole bunch of really in-depth soft tissue courses. And then was putting hands on people, went back to school for massage licensure, and you go back to training. Okay, I don't know enough about this. So you start getting into some type of athletic development courses or books. So it's just volumes of reading, spending a lot of money on secondary education courses. And you're just trying to constantly like fill gaps of knowledge in a sense. And so that's pretty much been it. With all that said, I really do wish I had initially in college had an inkling of wanting to do this, because I would have gone a medical route. But most people don't have a clue what they want to do when they're 18, declaring a major in college. It's ridiculous.
100%. 100%. And I feel like it's so rare in a way to have somebody actually have that follow through and that be what they do 100% for the rest of their lives. It's so rare. It's really rare. And I feel, it's very interesting to have seen that happen. I think it's changing a bit because I feel like there's more people. My brother is graduating from college now, and I feel like more of his friends and more younger people are kind of like, no, I'm not ready to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to spend money. I don't want to whatever. And I'm kind of with you. Like, I wish I would have just been like, no, I don't need to do this. It's very interesting to see that happen.
I was really lucky in that my sister and I both did really well academically. And so she and I both had scholarships to college. So one thing, at least in that regard, like I have a 4-year education that was of no benefit to me whatsoever. But at least I wasn't like $100,000 in debt for it.
Yeah. Yes.
And another thing that especially living in Australia, is the relevance of tradesmanship still.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear of the States having a resurgence of trade schools, which I think is like, I mean, let's face it, like modern's not the right word. Our parental ideas and constructs of what the journey through life should be, that shit doesn't fucking work anymore. And so these other avenues of trade schools or postponing college until you know what you want to do. Like, the only reason I fell into this is because after college, I went and traveled nonstop for years before I was like, all right, this is something I really do have an interest in. And then the passion started to fluid. Yeah, 18 years old, having to declare a major, it's insane.
No, it's totally insane. And from the American, standard education, there's no other choice. At least for me, there was no other choice. And I didn't even go to a school that was like went to a lower grade school in terms of like how good of a school it was. And it was still like you have to go to college or else you're going to be poor. That was basically like what it was like.
You know how many friends of mine went to college and are still fucking poor?
Yeah, super poor. Yeah, I know. It's crazy, but it is so interesting. The amount of successful people that have to travel to figure out what it is. Maybe it's that you find yourself while you travel, mixed with you find things that you actually enjoy while you're traveling, but there's something about it that just like it turns that switch in your head.
I think it's all of those things you just mentioned. Like, one, you get out into the world and you realize there's a lot of other kind of abstract opportunities that we weren't necessarily told about. So that the general standard pathway through life and the educational system and then job, career, etc. It's growing up, that's essentially what most of us were instructed. Because I assume I'm late 30s.
I'm 26.
So yeah,
26,
so like, so even there, like that's kind of a large gap. But like when I grew up, like that's what was kind of impressed upon me. And I'm sure with you guys, your demographic is probably a bit different, just because of information, like ease of information and spread. But also with travel, like you said, you start to figure out who you actually are. And it's not until I think you can get pulled out of your standard comfort zone. And that's what traveling will do. You just get out and see things and experience and just start to figure out, what your passions are, what you could throw yourself into a bit more, what you can do without. Like, I think that's a really big thing is traveling and getting used to just living with only a bag of things, and what really, just puts a frame of reference for what is valuable to you. I think all of that stuff is really beneficial for people to figure out what they want to do with themselves,
Yeah, absolutely. And it is this double-edged sword or whatever you want to say too, because I think that it can also be in the inverse, like when you come back or you try to live with more, you start living, like that kind of the opposite, adjusting back to, standard American life, or we'll say that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years with my husband. It's very interesting. But it opens your mind, and it also kind of tunnel visions your mind too, in this strange kind of way. It's very, it's very interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
What made you decide to start a business? How did that work for you?
Man, I just kind of fell into it. So I guess it was only maybe within the last 2 years that I was like, this could be a business. Prior to that, it was just most people within the health realm, myself included, like we get into this whole health realm not because we have an affinity for business, but because this is what we kind of are passionate about. And so generally we have to play catch up in the world of business and how to make a business out of something that we are doing. And so years back, I just started with the whole personal training rehab thing. I realized it needed to be down a path that I was interested in, meaning like general population personal training. It's not my thing. Like I still don't mind it. Like when I was living in WA, I was training a group of women like every other morning, and it was awesome, but like that standard gen pop thing, it's not my forte. So I was like, I need to go after something niche specific. And so just fell down the surf route thing, and then started doing some YouTube videos. And then that over years just accumulated and steamrolled and kept being added to, or suddenly it's like, okay, maybe this is a business unto itself. And then now it's become surf trips and online app stuff and program design and things, all of that. But it's still largely kind of just me fumbling around trying to make it work cohesively. And it was only the last year or so I teamed up with a guy who's essentially a business partner now, who's an app developer, and so the two of us have kind of made it into something. But I would still not at all say it's a well-oiled business by any means whatsoever. Um, but yeah, it does, it does pay some bills. So in that regard, I guess it is somewhat functioning.
Well, I would say it's very functioning. I would say, at least again from a consumer, it's a very the actual, and I'm only doing the free version, so everybody else.
I'll give you the full.
Okay. I wasn't
I'll
asking.
give you access to the full one.
That's awesome.
I'll hook it up.
Okay, sick. The hookup. It's
Yeah.
so in depth, that it's interesting to hear you say that um, that it's not a well-oiled business. It definitely, as a consumer, it definitely feels that way. It definitely feels that way. Everything from the app format, the logos, the way that you talk in your videos, it's really great. It's really, really great. I
That's
have to
good to
say.
hear. Thank you.
I guess it
So,
makes sense when you say that you're someone who's not satisfied, though, why you would say that.
yeah, right. And then like it's all the back end stuff. It's like
Yeah.
looking at the numbers from
Mm-hmm.
app downloads and the click through rates and all that stuff. That could be a lot more well functioning in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, but again, it's just me and this other dude. He's fairly savvy, but it's at the point now where like I need a business mentor to come in and like pull strings, and like, because again, I don't have a business background. I'm just some
Mm-hmm.
dude who was decent at training and applied it to surfing, and here we are. But it has just been this accumulation and steamroll. I never set out thinking we would do an app. I never set out doing any of this thinking we would run surf coaching trips.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kept evolving and accumulating, and then like some opportunities have presented, and we're like, all right, shit, let's give this a go.
Yeah. And so did the app start because people asked for it?
People were asking for it. And because like when I first did this first program, it's called Surf Training Success. I always hated the name. It Fitness apps weren't even really a thing yet, and they had over time that program. Like I'm over that program. Like it should be better and redone, but I didn't. The doing an app is a lot of work, and it was too much for me. And I met a guy in Bali who my girlfriend actually introduced me to, who ended up doing some website stuff for me. And he kept saying, let's do an app. Let's do an app. I was like, nah, I got no interest, man. No interest. And then just kept pushing it. And finally, like, okay, let's do an app, because people were asking like for new programs, and there needed to be a way to deliver the information more easily. And apps were becoming, everybody has an app now. So
Right.
it kind of was the natural evolution of that process, I guess. And finally dug heels in and got it done.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And so when you first started, was with the YouTube videos, then did people kind of reach out to you for one-on-one like
Over
online
time.
sessions? Yeah, over time. Okay.
Yeah. Over time. And I had a blog going for a while. And when I first started it, I was only like one of two people. And so now if you like, everybody's doing it. But at the time there wasn't much, or there wasn't much that was I considered to be credible and decent. And so yeah, as the blog kept going, people were like, hey, what do you think about this program design? And so I still do quite a lot of individualized coaching online with people and program design. Like just this morning, I was texting with some guys in California. Yesterday, I was on Skype with some dudes in Australia and some more in the States. So yeah, program design, coaching development, work with quite a few guys, nutritional based stuff, help oversee some rehab protocols here and there. And so, and like in the health field, there has to be different price points, because we only, here's a tangent. I'll give you a little tangent in the health field. So like some of the gurus that I learned from, their hourly rate's only like $500 an hour, which most people can't afford, to be honest. But if you're top in the field and you're only making $500 an hour, that ain't shit. Shitty lawyers make that much money, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So there has to be different price point opportunities within the realm of health and fitness for people to access you, essentially. So a lot of people can't afford what I charge for online coaching, and that's fine. And so then there's an app opportunity or a cheaper program opportunity. And like with all this Corona stuff that's been going on, like I've been giving the app out for free to some people even. And so just, there's just different entry points to access information essentially.
How would you define health? Because I feel that there's so many different people can define it in a different way. I'm interested in how you would define it.
I think contentment, and I say that over happiness, but contentment, is contentment even a word? But yes, being content with where you are and what you're doing, essentially. So it's like this overarching of, yes, I am satisfied within myself and everything I am doing and everything that is ongoing. So that essentially encompasses mental, emotional well-being, nutrition, sleep, physical health. So physical and mental, emotional health. So generally I think people assume health only with, yeah, I'm fit, I have some abs, I don't have cancer kind of thing. But it's this much broader spectrum of, for me, it's essentially, yes, I am content, because I think contentment is more important than happiness. Happiness, I think, can be fleeting. So you need to be content. Like, yes, I am at peace with how I'm interacting with the world and how I feel. I think that is health. And then that has all these offshoots that you could break down even further of, what is your nutritional and digestive health? What is the health of your relationships? What is the health of how you view yourself? So for me personally, you want to get deep, like my biggest issues I had some really severe health issues for a couple of years. So like there's a physical, but mostly like mental, emotional. Like I'm not heavy depressive, but I often it's easy for me to see, I don't see colors, like I'm not colorblind, but like people, I think it's easier for me to see grayscale and dark than it is to see colors in life.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
I have to like really focus on mental, emotional health more so than probably other aspects. But that's just me.
That's an interesting definition, because I would say that a lot of health coaches would not say contentment, because I think a lot of the health or wellness, whatever that world is, it's very much like either like grind forever and so hardcore and we're never stopping, or
so bullshit.
Or it's the opposite, which is like, just, whatever you feel is like,
and
yeah. Yeah. And I definitely think that with that comes maybe masculine and feminine. That's what I've found for sure. The feminine is very like, love yourself and flowery. And I think first, I'm not saying that doesn't work for people. And I'm not saying that also like the hardcore, like Soul Cycle and like really intense stuff doesn't work for people either.
I'm up at 4 a.m. I've always slept 3 hours. I'm working like,
yeah. It's just, so it's very interesting, but it's very refreshing too. It just feels very honest. The way you said that, it's really cool. Go ahead.
Those two scales you mentioned, right? Like they're far ends of the spectrum. And so people can't subsist and exist at a far end of the spectrum forever. It doesn't work. Physiologically, it doesn't work. Like if you're that grind all the fucking time, eventually something's going to break down. Physically, mentally, emotionally, something. Or if you're at the other end of the spectrum, where it's just, and just read The Secret and just do more affirmations. That shit ain't gonna work. At least not, depending upon what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve, right? But there needs to be a bit of both, and at times you need more of one than the other. And so again, I see you could be happy at either end of that spectrum, but are you really happy? And is happy what is somebody's scale of what happiness is? Again, I see happiness as this fleeting emotion. You can't be happy all the time. That's insane. What you can be is content with what is going on and accepting. Happiness is this elevated emotion, and you can't, if anything goes up or goes extreme, eventually it's going to have to come back down, because there needs to be a breaking point and a reset. And so I think it was a Laird Hamilton interview or something at one point where he's like, I think they asked him, like, what do you want for your kids? And I think he said to be content. And I think that's where it struck me, where it's kind of stuck with me since, that I see that, and whether it was either him or not, I don't know, but I see that as probably a lot more relevant than happy. Because there's a lot of times I'm not necessarily happy, but I could at least like step back and reflect and be like, I am content and at peace with where things are.
Sounds very healthy.
Yes.
It's health. It's full circle. It's so funny. So how do you eat, and how do you have your clients eat, if you're talking nutrition wise?
It's totally dependent. So for example, for me personally, I eat clean. And so we cook a lot. Mm-hmm. But this will segue into why nutrition really needs to be individualized. And what I'm doing for myself personally will perfectly illustrate this. So I've had gut issues for a long, long time. So I'm 100% gluten-free, can't do gluten. Dairy, not really. I can eat bits of good cheese. I love cheese. And so those are two huge things. Legumes and beans, I eat very little. So if people want to say like a paleo template, whatever, I eat a paleo template-ish of food. Mm-hmm. So I've had gut stuff. I was doing some really long-term gut protocols with a good friend of mine who's this brilliant chiropractor, gut specialist, where stemming off these health issues I had been battling for a couple of years, the gut still wasn't quite right. So gut protocols, finished up gut protocols while I was in the Mentawise doing a coaching trip at Macaroni's for like 5 weeks. So I had no control over my food. So I finished this hardcore gut protocol while I'm over there, and I can't necessarily control the quality of what I'm eating. Like, it's not like you being in the States or me here where I walk to the grocery store and buy whatever I need. So my got back to Bali, gut was still gnarly, went on another coaching trip, got even gnarlier. And so now I'm back here, and to be graphic, like, I get this gas that is fucking insane. Insane. And I eat clean. Like, it's not like I'm smashing down Macca's and like, that's McDonald's for Americans. Aussies call it Macca's. It's not like I'm smashing Macca's and soda and like pastries. Like, I'm eating clean, and I have this gut that will like clear a room. And so what I'm actually having to do now is basically no vegetables unless they're super, super well cooked vegetables. So I'm basically like, breakfast is like some type of protein and a bunch of like cooked fruit or really ripe fruit. And so it's this weird kind. Some people might look at that and think that's not healthy at all. But for what I'm having to do right now for my gut, because I've got a bacterial imbalance that can't handle loads of fiber from raw vegetables, I have to have like cooked or really digestible fruits, very digestible, more so than vegetables. And so that, I think, is just illustrating how it needs to be individualized. So if I was to work with you, first thing we would do was you have to write down everything you eat for me for 5 days, everything. And we look at that log, and then we're like, okay, with that comes some in-depth questionnaires that are basically looking at hormonal health, digestive health, sleep, do you get gassy, what do your poops look like type of thing, and then a really long-term health history. And then what are your goals? And then from there, all right, what do we need to start cleaning up? But we also have to figure out what you even know about nutrition. You might not know what paleo is. You might not know what keto is. You might not even know how to cook. So I can't make you go, not that I'm even a proponent of keto, but I can't make you go keto if you don't know how to cook, right?
Right.
So food log, we see what's up. Like, if you're eating fast food 5 days a week, we might start there.
Yeah. Right. It's a good place to start. Good place to start.
So And, if you look at a health history and there's been years of digestive issues and there's all sorts of bloating, we might need to look into some type of food elimination protocols and to see maybe, hey, get off gluten and dairy for a little bit and see how you feel. But we can't go gluten and dairy right away if you don't know how to cook and you're just eating fast food all the time. So it's a very non-dogmatic approach is what I'm trying to get at. Like, it really does need to be individualized. But at the end of the day, everybody needs to know how to cook, and you need to be eating predominantly whole foods, veg, protein, fruit, variations of that.
Is this, so with the nutritional thing, is this kind of how the dynamic nature of your business works? So you're like the different levels. So you might have like a highly individualized client, and then you have like someone like me who's doing it through the app, and you're doing the surf trips with people. Is that all in the same realm of your business?
So I lost you for a minute. You had said like individualized nutrition and then people like you, and then I kind of lost you.
Yeah, people doing the app or, doing your different courses like that, and then the surf trips are all different dynamics under the same tree of your business.
Pretty much, yes. Yeah, exactly. So, like the guy I've got in California at the moment, it's full program design. We're looking into his nutrition. We're going over some rehab protocols for some golfer's elbow. And then tomorrow I just have a Skype consult for an hour with a guy that wants to figure out some things he can do at the house that are a bit better for him. And then, we have other entrance points that are surf coaching trips, and then people like you using the app.
And the surf coaching trips, it's you and other surf coaches or with a group of people in the water?
Yep. So it's myself and Clayton Nienaber. I've known him for years, and I can't pronounce his last name. So he's phenom of a coach and surfboard shaper. And so generally it's he and I. And then sometimes we have, depending where, a good buddy of mine, Twiggy Van Ryan, who is another brilliant surf coach. And then I've done some other ones with a guy out of the UK, or he's South African originally, named Dave Renault. So generally, it's myself and another coach. And our trips go anywhere from 7 to 12 days, different locations, different skill levels, depending on the trip. And it's, let's teach you some things about your body and let's improve your surfing, because the underlying like frame of thought, right, is that for me, I want to surf for as long as I can, and I want to surf well. And there comes a time where you have to look at the underpinnings of your ability to surf, and that's your health. Simple as that. And so health, again, is that all-encompassing spectrum of health, and then movement. So if your body's out of whack, the whole longevity thing's kind of out of whack. So to improve the skill, you do need to become an active participant in your health and fitness, especially for long-term surfing. And so that's what we do on surf trips, and we just coach and improve and surf as much as possible. So the surf trips are incredible.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I can imagine how much benefit you would have by having somebody like breaking down your surfing while you're surfing.
The biggest thing first is like getting people to stop doing the things that are impeding their progression. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And so first comes awareness. So I think what Clayton and I are really, really good at, his brain and me just helping him deliver this info in a way that can be digested by people. You have to have an understanding of what surfing is. Most people, if you go watch a video of Kelly Slater, you just see him doing incredible things. You don't necessarily understand why his shoulder line and rotation and his twist is doing the things to the board that it's doing. So people can't improve something if they don't have an awareness. So most surfers don't have an awareness. Like, they're just like, that guy's really good. They don't look at it and dissect it and see what he's doing and where he's positioning himself and where he's leaning and where his arms are going. Because once you have that awareness, then it's like, okay, you see yourself on video here, what are you doing? And they're like, yeah, my arm, or yeah, I didn't look. And so you have to become aware first to then start breaking bad habits, to then start creating new habits, and then trying to do it for 5 seconds while you're on a wave. And so that's why the surf trips are good, because it just gives us a longer duration time period to work with people and to get them to relax. That's the biggest thing, is probably the relaxing and starting to be able to enjoy and perceive things a bit better.
I'm sure. I could imagine it being a little hard to hear critiques of your surfing, even if you paid for it, actually, now that I think about it.
Yes, it does. What we have is like a rule on the trips that we really only coach in the mornings. We'll coach in the afternoons, but it's kind of more like, you got to come ask me, because people need to not be told what they're doing wrong over and over.
Yeah.
Same myself. Like, I'll surf with Clay all the time, and he's like, Chris. I'm like, Clay, shut the fuck up, man.
Yeah. You're like, not now.
So yeah, no, it has to be, the dose has to be right, because they're part of the learning process. It's imperative to motor learning and the learning process is that you're also having fun and elevated emotions of fun and excitement. And so you have to there has to be periods of time with no coaching. And mind you, it's people coming on our trips. They're open to the process. Right. Otherwise they wouldn't be on our trip. But yeah, you're totally right. It gets frustrating when, that's why we as coaches need to know, like, when to dial it up, when to dial it back, when to dose it, when not to.
What is your own personal surf style like? Like, what kind of boards are you riding? What's your perfect wave? Walk me through that kind of stuff.
So I've gotten really spoiled now, having been living in Indonesia predominantly for the last couple of years. And so I ride like purely high performance epoxies. An epoxy thruster that's about 27.5 liters, fair bit of rocker. Like, it's a high performance shortboard. Mm-hmm. And then my step up and these are all Clayton surfboards, by the way. So the coach that we run trips with, he's my shaper. My step up is like a 511 or 6.0, probably about 28 liters. Again, kind of high performance, just more of a rounded pintail. So, like, for example, we surfed here at Australia yesterday, and because we were really pressed for time to get out of Bali, we only brought one board with us. So I brought like my 510, and we're surfing. I'm like, it's time for some new boards, some like shitty wave boards in a sense.
Yeah.
So in that regard, like, a really like super good wave for me is like 4 to 6 foot Indo size, like perfect right-hander that has like a barrel section somewhere and then tapers off into a wall where you can just kind of start whacking it. Mm-hmm. That would be like a perfect wave scenario for me. So like Hollow Trees in the Mentawais is an incredibly good wave. Rifles is just this insane kind of barrel wave. And then, living in Bali, we have access to some of the best waves in the world as well. So I'm really, really spoiled in that regard. Really, really spoiled. And like I was telling Fiona yesterday, I was like, I can't surf for shit. Like, suddenly, like, you put me in this mediocre surf and I'm like, fuck. So yeah, that's kind of my surf world at the moment. So I need to learn to surf some beach break again. It's not like perfect reeling reef break.
I have to say, and I think any of our listeners would agree with me, there's something really sweet about hearing you say that, because we're, for us, it's like the opposite problem. We're so used to these. Not here, it can get decent, but nothing compared to Indo, obviously. But then when you can go and you can actually surf waves that are perfect, you have to like slow down.
You have to.
You have to slow down because you have the time to make everything so precise, and you have the time in between waves to kind of like take a breather. I forgot who it was here on the lake that said that surfing here should be called paddling, not surfing, because you're just paddling, constantly paddling. And so it's It's interesting. I'll be interested to hear how your surfing changes from you kind of going back and surfing like not as good
So
waves.
say that again.
Oh
It's
yeah,
just
I said it'll be
impressed.
interesting to see how you like if you're there for a month, how you
Yeah,
feel like your surfing has changed.
yeah.
Um,
It's
that's cool.
growing up in Florida, right? Like we surfed a lot of shitty surf, and
Yeah.
it's always astoundingly impressive. If you see somebody shredding shitty surf, they are a high caliber surfer. High caliber surfer. And then if you can take good surfing and shitty waves and then put them suddenly onto a good wave, once they can figure out that slow down part, they should be able to just blow up and just absolutely flare. And you make a really valid point that one of the biggest things that we have a problem with on our coaching trips, especially in Indonesia, is getting people to slow down because they see this really good wave and they're like, shoulder, oh my gosh, I need to race the shoulder, go, go. And then we even have people say like, look, I'm used to just having to like get up, race, 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 and then maybe do a turn. And they're not used to like having all this time to just like sit in the pocket and do this bottom turn and whack it and come back down and sit in the pocket and having this wave that gives them all the speed they need. And so, yeah, you have to kind of change your frame of mind. And then equipment, like again, for me, like I need new equipment now that I'm back in Australia for like the mediocre days.
Yeah.
So
You need more beef. Some leaders in there.
I need some wit for sure. Give me some wit. Probably a lot less rocker. But Australia can get really good, like by all means.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I do need some kind of in between boards because I don't have any at the moment.
That's it's just it's the there is something about too much of one thing and not enough of the other. It's the same like, like I said, me going someplace else or when whatever waves you're used to, if it's an extreme, where I surf is an extreme, where you
Yeah.
were surfing in Bali is an
Yep.
extreme, and then finding that middle ground, it's just it's interesting to hear that, and I do think that makes us better as surfers, um, to change the dynamic,
Yes. Yes. Another thing we always talk about on trips, and it's talking about changing this dynamic, is like okay, one of the biggest issues we have with intermediate surfers, we get them to the mental wise, and they can't read waves, and I see it over and over. Getting yourself into as many different surf scenarios as possible in terms of waves, but paying specific and intentioned attention to looking at waves and where is it breaking, where is it drawing off the bottom, is this about to hit this fat like sandbar section again and not break. So me growing up in Florida, shitty waves, wind swell sometimes gets good. Like I think I got good at reading waves, and so I can sit in the back of a lineup and know immediately he's not making this wave. He's out of position. Paddle up, get it, and go. We get people to the mental wise, and they claim to be like intermediate surfers, but they have no wave knowledge, no
Mm-hmm.
wave understanding, and they just float in the water and bob around. Whereas they should be looking at interpreting and trying to build their library of wave understanding, visual representations, and paying more attention to like, this guy's a good surfer. Where is he taking off? What does the wave look like? What does the shoulder look like? What does the taper look like? Okay, this guy's too deep. I know that because I see the bottom of the wave already drawing here and he's all the way up there. And so trying to build that understanding more efficiently so if you get put into new wave situations, you have enough frame of references where you can start succeeding more quickly. Because we get so many guys on our trips where if they're not sitting with us and I'm calling them into a wave, they're not catching waves
Mm-hmm.
because they don't know how to read a lineup. So I think that's really, really important, A, to experience-wise more waves, but to pay more specific attention to trying to read the language of waves.
Mm. What is the most common issue that people have with surfing when you're taking them on trips?
Yeah.
Like we're talking not beginners, but more like intermediate surfers is what you're saying, other than reading waves.
Yeah. So yeah, reading waves is one, because that ends up becoming a lot of shitty paddling and frantic paddling. The mindset and the awareness and perception you take into a wave is going to set up the rest of the wave. So over and over and over, we're like, all we see is this. People are looking at the ocean. They see a wave coming. They turn around immediately. They stop looking at it. They have no idea what's going on, and they start frantically paddling as hard as they possibly can. And then the wave just goes to shit because they're bringing malintentioned energy. And so we have to first start getting people to calm down and to pay more attention to the wave and their placement. Where do you need to, because again, we're in the mental wise a lot in Indonesia, so it's reef break. So we really need to be specific about our takeoff point, because 3 meters that way is too far on the shoulder. 3 meters the other way is too deep. So there's this, so we need to get people to calm and relax and paddle in calmly. There's a difference between, I could paddle with 100% effort, but it would be calm and focused rather than just flailing and kicking and all over the place. You understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I can be intentful with my paddle in, but calm. Because if I'm bringing calm and intentioned effort, I'm already looking down the line. That's the biggest thing. Calm, intentioned paddle in, using only as much energy as I need. Some waves I can two-stroke into. Other waves I have to dig as hard as I can. But I'm still calm and I'm looking down the line. Look down the line. You have to look where you want to go. Because if you don't know what's coming, how can you react? How can you, if you don't know what's coming, can I fade out my bottom turn and be slow? Or do I need to get to my feet and immediately pump? So you've got to look. And that calmness will then come down to the line to get people to realize they have more time. And this gets into, we nerd out a lot on our coaching trips about the neurology of perception and fear. And if there's any anxiety or stress component, it will hijack your processing centers within your brain. So how can you start to work on something new on a wave if all you're doing is frantic paddling, not even looking where you need to go, and just freaking out about reef? You can't be successful in that scenario. So number one, learn to read the wave, calm the fuck down, and paddle in calmly. And you need to be excited and like there needs, like, I'm stoked about this. Yes, like look what I'm about to get to go surf. So that's kind of one big one that has a bunch of multiple aspects. And then the second one is the stance. Like we have to fundamentally often change somebody's stance position. It needs to not be squatty poo man. It needs to be like, I'm a sprinter, I'm a boxer, I'm a fighter kind of stance, where you bring the hips forward to face down the line rather than sideways. Like we always, people aren't gonna be able to see this at home, but like, okay, I'm sitting at a desk, right? Here's my mouse hand. People do this and then they surf. There's still this like poo man desk surfer where it needs to be bring the hip around, face forward, and now I'm like a fighter kind of sprinter position. That has to change. Places your body in an orthopedic alignment that you can then access all the other movement positions you need to for surfing.
That's excellent advice, and I think all of that also applies to a beginner surfer too, because you're also frantic and you need to look down the line when you're a beginner too. So it's just interesting that those same principles apply, seems like, all the way through surfing.
So what works for a beginner, especially in terms of like stance, it works for them because it's the most stable position for them to be in. Like really wide, low center of gravity, arms all flung out. It works for them getting up onto the wave and standing for the first time. The problem is intermediate surfers carry that into their attempts at being an intermediate surfer, and that will totally prevent any progression because of how it positions them on top of a board and how they're then able to access movement. They can't. And then, people are used to doing this insane, frantic paddling. It's like I'm getting ready to release like our full like paddle technique training, etc. program in the app. And a lot of it is better positioning. Where are you looking? Learning how to use the gears and efforts of paddling and knowing when to use more or when to use less and what good paddling looks like. Because that mindset and kind of energy that you take in to start the wave sets everything up for the wave. And so, you gotta calm and look and perceive before you can really start making some changes.
That's awesome. I really want to like go surfing now. I feel like I got so much hot tips, you know. It's funny because sometimes you get that, you know, when you talk to somebody and you're like, I just want to go surf now, you know? Or you just like, I don't know, sometimes I get that for whatever reason. I'm just like, yep. But now it's, you know, it's dark here, so no surfing for me. Maybe I'll just go for a jog or something. What is the weirdest wave you have ever surfed?
So there's two. One's an actual wave, and I won't actually say the name because people are starting to surf it, and it's in the Mentawais. But we got it really good last year, and it's this funny kind of wave, and it's just weird in its setup. It's one of the most beautiful reefs in the Mentawais that I've seen with a wave, and it's kind of this deeper water wave. And so if the sun's out, it's this like shocking turquoise blue, like it's insane, and the reef's super colorful. But where you take off, 3-foot takeoff, maybe 4 foot on when it's big, because it doesn't handle big surf. And it's shallow, like you'll scrape your feet on the reef sometimes in between waves, but the reef itself has these huge crevices in it. So like you'll scrape your feet, and then right beside it, it's like 3 meters deep, and then it comes back up. So as it comes in, it almost looks like it's going to be a closeout, and you get this chip in single pump. And then because of the reef, it immediately drops off towards deep water, but the wave like doubles in size.
Wow.
But it doesn't break because suddenly it's deep water. So you go like from 3 foot to like 6 foot plus, and it's just this huge wall where it's almost like this big snowboard wall where like you have to stay back, and you come up and you just like fade it back down, and then come back up and fade it back down. And as the whole wave keeps wrapping into the reef, it then stands back up finally on the inside section, and you get like this full fucked up barrel section sometimes. So it's weird, like this weird little takeoff, this kind of like that looks like it's going to close out, but those are the ones you want. And then it becomes this huge wall where you just have to fade back, and like big snowboard powder turns, you know, fade back and then pump, and then see if you can set up this barrel on the inside. But as you're getting barreled, it's fucked up because like there's these big gnarly coral heads coming really close to the surface. So like, again, it'll be like deep there, big coral head here, deep there, coral head there. And there was actually a guy nearly died there last year, head first into the coral head. So it's this super fun, weird wave that you get this like all these different components on a single wave. Other weirdest wave I've surfed is actually a giant sand dune. And so in Colorado, one of the most impressive geographies I've ever seen, I think it's called Great Sand Dune National Park or something. So it's at the foot of, I think, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. These big, like, they call them the 14ers or something. It's these big, like, 14,000 foot mountain range or something. They're huge, right? And over the millennia, there's these two mountain ranges with a big valley in between. The winds have built up massive sand dunes at the corner of one of these mountain ranges. They're huge. Like, for us to get to the top of some of them, it was like an hour-and-a-half hike. And then you're up there, and it's desert sand dune, snow-capped mountains. And actually, like, it snowed a bit when we were standing on the sand dunes. and you can rent a like a snowboard, but it's made out of wood, you know. And you climb up to the top of one of these sand dunes, and you just set your rail, and it's like downhill as fast and sane as possible. And it was so fun. And then you got to hike back up, and that's shit. But that's probably one of the weirdest I've ever surfed. Like, it was so fun.
What was your biggest oh shit moment while surfing?
Probably just two. Like, one of them is like, oh shit, I'm gonna die, like from like a near drowning. And I think most surfers have that at one point or another. The oh shit, like. And what was interesting, I've recounted this before on a podcast. After the oh shit kind of thing, I'm like, I'm for sure, like, this is it, I'm dying. This is it. Oh shit. It's like, all I could think about was that my mom was on the beach actually, just reading while I was surfing. And all I could think about was my poor mom is going to wonder where I am, sitting on the beach, and I'm out here dead. And so that was an oh shit moment. And then the other ones are mostly like, oh shit, I'm about to get so properly fucking shacked. There's been a couple oh shit moments like that where like this is about to be one of the waves of my life. And there's two or three of those. And I think those are probably the biggest oh shit moments. Like one bad, one good.
My last question for you is, what is next for you? I know it's kind of a weird question to answer right now, but
Yeah. Well, no, it's like we've spoken about it, my partner and I, like girlfriend, we've got to kind of just play it by ear, like to see, you know, we've talked about, are we moving? Are we not? I'm like, look, we don't know. We don't know how long this is going to take place. We don't know what's going to change financially, geographically, travel-wise. So more than anything, like going back to that whole contentment thing, like we just kind of have to be content with where we're at the moment. So where we're at is we're going to start growing some microgreens. Like, because we don't know how long we'll be here. So doing a whole garden thing, but we're going to start doing some microgreens. Kind of just setting in some partial roots here for the time being, and tentatively planning what next year looks like with like surf trips, work-wise. And then I've got to just dial in a bunch of the app stuff because, again, like there is this current time where there's a lot of demand. So I have a lot of workload in regards to that, like the paddle training program that'll be coming out soon. Clayton and I have some more technique programs coming out soon. So there's a lot of workload with that. But for the most part, it's like, let's see what comes of it over the next 3, 6, 12 months kind of thing. And just, you know, be kind of thankful we're in a location and position that so yeah, that's kind of it.
Well, that is a perfect way to end the podcast. Thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome. This was so fun.
Sure. Yeah.
And that was episode 38. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you are happy and healthy, staying sane in the quarantine. If you are able to surf still, I hope that you are taking some time to get some good waves. I know I have had a couple of good waves here. Some of our last waves in the freshwater for now. It's feeling really good. And if you are interested in getting a hold of Cris, his Instagram is @surfstrengthcoach, @surfstrengthcoach.com. I really advise you to check out the website. It's super awesome. I just think you guys are really going to love it, especially if you're in an area that is not actually allowed to surf right now. So that is the episode. I hope you guys loved it, and I will see you next Monday.